Oh, happy sunny afternoon as well. Super excited. Even if there are some clouds in there, if we can get a few sun rays, we are excited to be here. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here today. I will be recording the meeting today for those who weren't able to join us, and I will be sure to send that video link out in an upcoming BHI Network Policy Digest, so Friday's Digest. Let's get our meeting started with our land acknowledgement. We would like to open this convening by recognizing that we are on the unceded ancestral land of the Coast Salish peoples, the traditional home of all tribes and bands within the Duwamish, Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. We cannot work to fulfill our vision and our mission of an anti-racist present if we don't first acknowledge and recognize the true history and cost of colonization. However, acknowledgement is only a first step, and we urge you to engage in accountable relationships and informed actions. So first, just a quick few announcements. Please do be sure to send me updates and info for the Policy Digest, things that are good for the whole. I look to you to stay informed on news pertinent to our shared priority to increase Black homeownership. And if you're not yet signed up for our weekly BHI Network Policy Digest, please do so. And please feel free to invite others to do so as well. We want to continue to grow this network and our impact. During the legislative session, our digests are full of time-specific actions that support the bills in our homeownership policy framework. But to turn this action into influence, we do need you to participate. So please consider signing in pro. It really does only take 30 seconds, and it makes an impact. The length of that position list is the first thing that a committee member will look at to determine if a bill has support. And when they see a list that's got a low amount of support, there's less impetus for them to move forward with that bill. As you can see in this slide, our agenda is packed again. The House of Origin cutoff just happened yesterday, so the bills we'll be hearing about today are the ones that have lived to see another day, and they're going to need your support to make it through the opposite house. Today we begin at the federal level. We don't do homeownership policy at the federal level, but we have all been hearing one announcement after another. And although it can be taxing, it is still important that we stay engaged. HDC is creating space for sharing this load and to better understand the impacts that federal changes are having on our housing ecosystem. So Lauren McGowan of LISC will invite us into that conversation. Brady Nordstrom? Yes? Hi, Lauren. Yep, not yet, but there you are.
Okay.
We'll see you in a minute. Good to know you're in the room. And Brady Nordstrom of HDC will provide us with an update on the 2 condominium bills in our framework. I'll provide an update on the remaining lead bills in our framework. It's been an action-packed number of weeks since we've seen each other, and 5 of our lead 7 bills are still active. We're also going to hear from Representative April Berg, the committee chair of the Housing Finance Committee, about where the legislature is in the budget process and what we can expect over the next few weeks. Dan Bertollet of Sightline Institute is going to get us up to date on the lot splitting and parking reform bills, and Denise Rodriguez of Washington Homeownership Resource Center will let us know how we can support foreclosure prevention services. Finally, Jesse Simpson of HDC will remind us that the comprehensive plan is still in process and let us know when we can next be called upon to provide our input to shape that direction of Seattle for the next 20 years. We'll end with some open floor time with news from you. So please be ready to share information you think would be good for the group. Always want to hear what's going on. And then given our full agenda, we're going to just go ahead and dive right into hearing from Lauren McGowan of LISC. I'm going to end my screen share, and we'll have Lauren take the floor to tell us about HDC's efforts to hold space for our housing ecosystem, to share about federal impacts in our sector. Take it away, Lauren.
Hey, Bambi, thanks for giving me some time today, and hello to everyone. I hope everybody's hanging in there. I know these are incredibly challenging times. The chaos that we're seeing at the federal level is extraordinarily challenging for the communities that we all serve, for all of us, for our organizations, combined with, the challenges of a very difficult state budget session and what we all face every single day. I just want to acknowledge and thank you all for taking time to be part of the BHI network, and everything that you do on behalf of the communities that you serve. So thank you for being you. Thank you for being here. As an HDC board member and a BHI core team member, I really felt like it's important for us to think about how we take some time in this moment to come together and reflect on what's going on as community leaders and advocates, to think about how we best advocate together, and how we start reimagining what the future looks like. I'm really appreciative that HDC has decided to convene a group to look at this, and Chris Persons from Community Roots and myself are going to co-chair that effort. Alongside, we'll be working with the Puget Sound Regional Council to really ensure that our federal delegation is tied to it. So on Friday at the HDC members quarterly meeting, and on in the coming weeks, you're going to hear more information about what this means. I encourage you all to lean in. If you are looking for a place to express your thoughts, find a place to advocate, and to share the impacts of the cuts that you may be facing, your communities may be facing, or just the challenges of not knowing. I think for a lot of us, it's what we don't know and what we expect is also super challenging. So we're going to create space for that. There's going to be a peer leaders network, a space for leaders to engage. So more to come on that. But I just want to invite you all to actively take part in that. If you want to learn more, or you want to just grab a coffee, shoot me an email. While I know that we are in a really difficult time, we know that the work of the Black Home Initiative are so important, and it will not happen with.
Lauren, I think I've lost your audio. Oh, you're muted. There we go. Try again.
Sorry about that. Anyway,
No
I encourage you all to participate and be part of this. We will have more information. Bambi will get information out in the newsletter. Bambi, anything else you need from me?
Sure, Lauren. BHI does have a lot of overlap with HDC, and HDC is the one kind of convening this group around federal concerns. Is there any concern if you're not an HDC member for you to join, or is everyone welcome to these conversations? And Lauren, I think we still have you a little bit muted there. And we're still,
Yeah, we'll provide more guidance. I would say we're in the early stages.
Great. All right.
Can you
well,
hear
thank
me?
you so much. Yeah, I can. We got that last part there. It
Hey,
sounds
Bambi,
like,
can you hear me?
yeah, now I can. Now I can. There we go. So we're having a little bit of technical difficulties.
Sorry about that,
But there you are. I
y'all.
can hear you now. Absolutely.
Great. So we'll provide more guidance in the coming weeks. We want to certainly make space for everybody within BHI, I think there's going to be a number of different ways in which we convene. So more to come on where those spaces are and what that's going to be.
That's great. And then I'll just add, this effort to kind of create some space for people to talk about federal impacts is, again, both to just acknowledge that that's happening. It's having a big effect on ourselves, our staffs, and also the possibility of being able to communicate what's happening to federal allies. So there will be the possibility of some of our federal representatives and federal senators to have staff who can understand what we are bubbling up as the results. And so it would be really great. I'll be sure to make sure you're informed about the opportunities that come forward. Because, in Black Home Initiative, again, we have a lot of overlap with much of our HDC membership, but we also have very specific members to our group as a network that is just open, that can allow us to just see a lot more than we might see without that invitation. So thanks to HDC for extending an invitation so that we can all not only just acknowledge what's happening in this world at this moment, but really kind of figure out what are those buckets of effect that are happening, and what can we do to raise our voice to make sure that those impacts are seen, and we can help try to change that dialogue. So thanks again for Lauren. Thanks for Chris for leading that group, and I will be sure to send out any information as they come up to their first meeting. I believe it's going to be in about a week or so, and so you'll see that email via the BHI Network Policy Group email list, and potentially in the digest as well. But go ahead and have a look out for those. So thanks again to Lauren. Next, we're going to turn over to Brady. Brady is going to help us understand 2 of our 7 lead bills. Some exciting news to share. Brady's been doing an enormous job in making sure that these 2 bills are moving forward in our legislative session. And these are complicated bills, so so happy to have him on the team and taking lead for these. And I'll leave it to Brady to tell you where we are.
Great. Well, thank you all. Brady Nordstrom here, he, him pronouns, and I am with the Housing Development Consortium. So as Bambi was saying, we are working on 2 condominium liability reform bills this year, and I have some. There was some foreshadowing there. Both of the bills passed out of the House this Tuesday. One in the afternoon, and one was all the way towards like 9 p.m. And that is really excellent news. So. For House Bill 1403 that's sponsored by Rep Hill. It made it out of the House with 89 yays and only 7 nays. So that's a really positive bipartisan sign that there's strong support for this bill. And I just as a reminder, again, this is the bill that is looking at the statutory language around condo liability and making changes for clarity. Based on negotiations that happened with the HOA attorneys and the Washington trial attorneys, we were hearing that from senators that basically the bill was going to die if we didn't get agreement with the trial attorneys, and we achieved that. Some of the parts of the bill were cut out, but we believe that the highest impact parts are still there, which includes that clarification that I was talking about, that when someone builds a condo, it should be clear what standards are applied, so that in the future that liability isn't a question. There's also a desire to balance consumer protections with this, and so that's the delicate balance that we're trying to make. And then the other piece is a small condo exception to the implied warranty. And the point here is that smaller condos, which is defined as condoized ADUs or units that are 12 or projects that are 12 units or less, and then 2 or less stories, unless one of the stories is parking, and then it can go to 3. You see how it gets complicated very quickly. But this is the other piece that made it through. And the reason that this is important is House Bill 1110 implementation is happening all over the state. And we're hoping that this can create another option for ownership for first-time homeowners. So that bill advanced. It's moving to the Senate Housing Committee. There's no committee schedule yet. So the second bill, which is a study on insurance coverage options for permanently affordable home ownership units. The insurance market is incredibly difficult to regulate because it's a private market, and insurance companies, as we've seen in places all over the US, they can say, nah, no thanks. And they can leave and not offer insurance. And so there's a lot of issues that are different that are faced by our permanently affordable home ownership organizations, many of whom are here in this room today. And I just want to thank everyone again for all your support. So this bill actually passed along party lines off the floor. That's 58 nays and 58 yays and 38 nays. So we believe that there are some misconceptions around what this bill does. So we're actually expecting stronger support in the Senate. So that's also an optimistic perspective. I would add that this one already has its first committee assignment. And so if you're open to it, and this is incredibly helpful, if you just want to go in there and sign in pro for yourself or your organization, it makes a huge, huge difference. And I just want to say again, this has been a coalition effort. I've been coordinating, but we have awesome legislative champions with Rep Hill and Rep Taylor. We have awesome coalition partners that have been involved in lots of meetings and lots of negotiations. And we have a lot of support in general from just the public that there's a strong desire to see condo. So I'll stop there. I could definitely keep going because these are complicated bills, but I think overall, this is a milestone to celebrate, and hopefully it is a good sign that that we'll have success in the Senate. So fingers crossed. And again, the point of these bills is to unlock condos in Washington State for first-time homeowners in particular. So thank you again, and you should just expect to get random updates for needs from me, probably through Bambi, because again, this advocacy and policy, it's a team sport. It's impossible for one organization or individual to do it. So thank you all again.
And Brady, I'm just going to see, does anyone have a question about either the Condo Reform Bill, HB 1403, or the Permanently Affordable Condo Insurance Study, HB 1516? And while we're waiting to see if anyone has a question, feel free to follow Denise and go ahead and take that 30 seconds to hit the link there and sign in pro. And again, this is a scenario where we have these great relationships with legislators. So we have Representative Taylor leaning in. The CHA trailer bill is a big handful, but she also knows that we need those full solutions in order to move, Black home ownership, and condominiums are going to be a part of that solution. So it's been great to have her there. And we also have Rep Hill, who is a new rep this year, being a very incredible champion as we move through. Any other questions coming up for anyone here around the 2 condo bills? We just hit that cutoff, and so we are actually, a little bit elated when we have made it through that House of Origin. It's kind of magic. We work every day to try and get these through the committees. There's so much strategizing and trying to connect people, and it's really affirming when you can see that you pass a House and you're kind of ready to see what's going to happen in the next. Any other questions? We're a little ahead of time here, so happy to take some questions.
Maybe a detailed question about the implied warranty of quality. I'm mostly joking, but
yes, that goes well with lunch. That is exactly what people are wanting to do. Well, if it seems like there are questions that come up, feel free to interrupt. I'm going to go ahead and once again share my screen quickly so that I can give us an update on the remaining 5 bills that are part of our homeownership policy framework lead bills this year. And so hopefully you all can see that screen. And if you can't, please feel free to unmute and let me know, as I'm sure all of you who have ever had to lead a remote meeting know that you can't see all the things and all the people at the same time. So please feel free to unmute and let me know if you can't hear me or you can't see anything. All right, well, thank you for that update on the 2 condo bills, Brady, and really happy to see those 2 moving forward. I'm going to do an update on the remaining lead bills in our homeownership policy framework, and then we will be hearing from Representative Berg. And maybe I could ask Brady or maybe Jesse to just keep an eye out for Representative Berg as they enter into the space here. We're always excited to have one of our legislators in this meeting. It is super difficult for them to do it. They never know when caucus will run on long, when a committee meeting will run on long, when floor votes will run on long. And so we always need to be just a little bit flexible about their ability to come into the space. And that is why we're having a few less legislators in these meetings at this moment, because it is just a really busy session. So we do have a total of 7 lead bills, and that's a bit of a big lift this year. And as of Wednesday, the House of Origin cutoff, we have 5 of the 7 bills that are still in progress. So the Covenant Homeownership Act trailer bill made its way through the House Housing and the House Appropriations Committee with Democratic support and strong Republican opposition. Amendments during those committees moved the eligibility threshold for participants from the current 100% to 120% area median income, and also offered the loan forgiveness possibility for those at 80% area median income or below after their loan has been outstanding for at least 5 years. Now, increasing the income threshold and providing the possibility of loan forgiveness are straight recommendations from the Covenant Homeownership Program study that delineated the history of discrimination, determined how much the assistance should be and who should be assisted, and also provided these recommendations to increase access, flexibility, and efficacy for the program. The study showed that there is a large number of households within the racial and ethnic groups impacted by housing discrimination that have incomes between 100 and 120%, who have a substantial need for down payment assistance to afford a modest cost home in our very expensive housing market. We also know that discriminated households are less likely to have intergenerational wealth in their family to pass down to assist with a down payment. And introducing a loan forgiveness option allows homeowners that flexibility they may need to make critical decisions for their future. Should they need a larger home for a growing family after this first home? Should they need to, move to assist a loved one or for a new job? Having that large down payment loan that is at 0% but must be paid back at the sale of the home, it does limit options for any families that might be facing change after they get into this first-time home. So loan forgiveness also addresses that building of intergenerational wealth for families, providing the possibility of a transformative impact on their lives, compounding that first-time home ownership. It will be very transformative for the lives of the future generations of their family. So these recommendations from the study are rooted in the spirit of CHA, and they were challenged aggressively by Republican representatives. During the House floor debate, there were 15, double digits, unfriendly amendments introduced, and that culminated in about 5.5 hours of, basically disparaging remarks hidden in doublespeak as support for the bill. The Democratic legislators stood united in the House, and they were having none of it. Not one of those amendments passed, and there were very many inspiring moments witnessed in the comments of our dedicated Democratic champions. I will certainly put the video link for this in the digest on Friday if you are interested in having a look at some of the sections of the testimony that happened during the House. It was a difficult hearing to sit through, and we certainly do not want to see that kind of shenanigans happening in the Senate. And so we're going to look to all of you to help us. So now the Covenant Homeownership Act trailer bill will move on to the Senate. There will be a public hearing. It is happening next Wednesday, March 19th at 1:30 p.m. We're excited to see our hearing dates set. It means that we hopefully will not be in that group who's trying to meet the next cutoff, because we will have our bill heard and in process. But I may be reaching out to many of you separately to ask for you to testify during this hearing. So if you are interested in testifying, please do email me. We are going to organize the testimony carefully so that we can hit all of our needed points, but we don't want to overwhelm or irritate committee chairs with drawn out testimony. So we're going to try to be impactful and concise. And if you are interested in testimony, please reach out to me. And of course, testimony can be remote, it can be in person. You are thinking of 60 seconds, maybe 90. The biggest part of testimony is waiting to be heard, not really your kind of 60 or 90 seconds of a spotlight. So I will be reaching out, and please reach out to me. If we learned anything in the House process, it was that it is no longer 2023. It is definitely 2025, and Republicans have been emboldened by their wins in 2024, and they are showing up in force. They have email lists that they are activating that are like 250 people long, and they are able to, within minutes, fill up position lists very quickly and efficiently, and that's where I need you all to come in. So we do need you to really just, light a fire and activate all of your networks. We are asking for 1,000 people to sign in pro for this Senate hearing that we are going to be having next Wednesday. We need to send a strong message to the Senate. This bill originated in the House. It had 41 co-sponsors in the House. But now we're in the Senate, and we do not have that same level of guaranteed support that you can get when you have your co-sponsor list. We do have Senator Lovick, who was the co-sponsor of the original Covenant Homeownership Act, who will be a champion rallying people together in the Senate, but we need to be helping him out. So Republicans in the House were not only attacking the trailer bill and what it wanted to do, they were attempting to both greatly diminish the existing program, and many of their amendments were an attempt to end the program altogether. So we do expect that we may continue to see this in the Senate, and we really do need you to advocate for the program so it can continue to change lives. In the first 7 months of this assistance, the program has helped more than 250 families in 20 of our counties across the state to buy a home. Nearly $30 million have been distributed, and there are many more homeowners in the pipeline for assistance. So this is a very highly successful program. It is repairing harm. It is leading the nation in doing so. And there is nothing guaranteed. We worked strongly together to get this bill passed, and it was one and done. It was amazing. It was noteworthy. It was groundbreaking. But the legislation can change on a dime. And so we need to make sure that we are showing up in support of this bill. So 2 other lead bills that we have are currently part of the budget process. And that process is unfolding. You know, shortly we'll be hearing from Representative Berg about the budget situation. And so Representative Berg will give us a great idea of what's happening. And you'll be able to understand more kind of where these provisos are sitting at the moment, along with all provisos. So we have an operating budget ask of $3 million to ensure that the Covenant Homeownership Program applicants get the homeownership counseling they deserve, and also to ensure that buy-in for developers are getting the support that they need to create the homes needed in our communities. Solutions need to be coming from our communities. Solutions need to be impacting our communities positively. And so this is a proviso sponsored by Representative Taylor. We went last year to get money for buy-in for developers and homeownership counseling, and we are back at it again this year, and we look for your support. The Scalable Starter Home Production Plan, if you'll recall, it came out of last year's budget proviso, and they are seeking $1.7 million for demonstration projects to utilize innovative construction methodologies to examine how they can increase the number of starter homes here in Washington State. So this is another scenario where, you know, they went through the process of creating an interim plan. It was released in just a little bit ago. They will have a final plan that comes out in June to the legislature, but they are moving ahead to make sure that it's not just another plan on the shelf. They want to make sure that they're going to build some housing. They are going to accomplish the demonstration projects. And advocacy for these, you know, provisos is going to be a little bit more nuanced as we wait to get budget forecasts and see revised budgets from the legislators. And we'll let you know when you can lean in for these critical resources. This proviso was sponsored by Senator Trudeau, and we want to thank her for her willingness to champion this work and her continued support of the work that we're doing here together. Finally, there are 2 bills of our 7 lead bills that are no longer in the legislative process. The Scalable Starter Home Production Plan team did introduce a bill to help create regional housing land banks to better organize the disposition of no longer needed public land for housing. Unfortunately, the bill was a last-minute entry into the system, and it didn't have the time to garner the support it needed to get through the House. This was an introduction year for the concept, and the bill may be back in 2026. Representative Natasha Hill of the 3rd Legislative District was the primary sponsor for the bill. This is Rep. Hill's first year in the legislature. She's currently the vice chair of the House Housing Committee, and we're incredibly excited to have Rep. Hill in the House. She is a strong, principled leader who we very much look forward to continue working with. Rep. Hill is the primary sponsor of the bill we were just hearing about, HB 1516, the Permanently Affordable Condominium Insurance Study. And we are going to try to get her to maybe join us in April so that we can meet her and thank her. Senator Alvarado was pushing through her limiting investor-owned housing bill to deter investor-owned housing firms from buying up the affordable single-family homes in our state and communities. The bill made it through the policy and the fiscal committees. It went all the way to the Rules Committee, but it did not get pulled yesterday for a House floor vote. So it did not meet the House of Origin cutoff. There was real resistance, as you might imagine, to this bill from those who benefit from these investments. But this proactive bill might be back in 2026. And we want to thank Senator Alvarado for sponsoring this bill and continuing to be a primary champion for housing. Senator Alvarado was one of the handful of representatives who became a senator this year when the positions opened up, and we very much look forward to continuing work with her in the Senate. And so with that update, we're going to go ahead and move to hearing from Representative April Berg of the 44th Legislative District. Rep. Berg, again, is going to help us understand better where we are in the legislative budget landscape. And I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen so I can see if Rep. Berg is in the room. And there she is. Excellent. Welcome.
Hi. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. It's great to see everyone. It is It's, welcome to cut off week. And so I got the tail end of that, Bambi, with some of the bills that are dead. We've got a lot of really good bills that are very, very dead. As you know, we are in a budget deficit, and that is consuming all of the air and time and resources. I was able to drop our Affordable Homes Act right before we went into full-time floor. Part of the thinking with that is that it is NTIB, meaning it's necessary to implement the budget. So that does not have the traditional time clocks on it, nor do our revenue ideas or options. Those are all, there's no actual time clock on there other than they need to be introduced before 10 days, the last 10 days of session. So that said, right now we're in a period of just really trying to understand the problem statement and the magnitude and the size of the cuts potentially needed. And I say cuts because we have to kind of start there with what will happen if, right? If we don't get progressive revenue, if we don't make headway in affordable housing. So it's, unfortunately, I think since the last time I may have spoken to you, the problem statement's gotten larger, and we're probably looking at more of a $12 to $15 billion deficit over a 4-year period than that original 10 that you heard from the governor. On Tuesday, we'll have the latest economic revenue and forecasts come out. That will be the one that we are writing the budget to. And I wish I could say it might go the other direction or we might see some room. It's probably going to get worse. So at this point, I think what we're realistically looking at is a series of severe and devastating cuts, as well as some revenue. And I think for stakeholders across the state, it's kind of landing that even if we raise a historic level of revenue, so let's say we raise $10 billion in revenue. Let's say we raise 6 billion, 7 billion. Those are levels that we've never, ever done before in our state. That would be double and triple what we've ever done as a state. Not to say it's not doable, but even if we do that, we are still looking at the neighborhood of 5 to 6 to 7 billion in cuts. So letting that land, these cuts are going to hit every aspect, every avenue. And then, of course, we've got the federal shenanigans. And so we all knew that after November, that first Tuesday in November, things were going to look drastically different. I don't think any of us could have considered or thought about how bad it would be. So even seeing this week, the latest $1 billion cut to food security, meals and things like that. There's no universe where as a state we can backfill that, plus the cuts that are coming to Medicaid, plus the cuts that are coming to potentially, that are going to impact our supply for housing because of tariffs, et cetera. So just kind of stick a pin in all of that and just dealing with what we have control over, which is our state budget. So we just ended cut off from both the House and the Senate. I'm kind of punchy today because we were here till 3 a.m. last night. So we've had some really long nights on the floor, passing some really good policy that doesn't cost money, right? So the number of bills that we passed off the House floor was very small dollar amounts. And so we passed some great policies, and it frankly took lots of hours to do that. So I think, as far as advocacy groups go, just, give us a little bit of grace as legislators. For the House, at least, we're operating on very little sleep, very little money. Some really great policy things that we want to do. But again, we're going to be playing a lot of defense from the federal level. So what can you do on the positive side, as advocacy groups? I would say being very mindful of some of the asks that maybe you have in the capital budget and as well as the operating budget. Those might go unanswered, especially if there's any increase from maintenance. I think maintenance is the best case, and I think you're going to see some pretty severe decreases from even maintenance level funding. So that's number one. Number two, being supportive of progressive revenue, knowing that it's never going to be enough to fill the actual deficit. And so that's going to be, I think, tough for a lot of organizations to see the levels of revenue we're going to have to raise to just keep the lights on. And then three, we really are working hard with the series of bills and keeping options open. So part of me dropping the Affordable Homes Act in the House is to give that as an option for potential funding. And it had the local option REIT in it. It's got it's really truly a mansions tax. It doesn't have multifamily or commercial, just to kind of take a little bit of the heat off of it. But it gives our budget writers some additional opportunities for resources as they're looking for ways to fund things in the housing space. Doesn't mean it's a slam dunk, but I wanted to make sure it was a part of the conversation. If you think the timing is a little weird, I wanted to get it in there before our big revenue bills drop so that we already have that in place, sponsored bill sponsors, so that they, again, have that as a tool as they're looking for funding sources. You know, if you're like me and you like to Monday morning quarterback, which I do often, and I'm a petty woman, sometimes I go, hey, what if we would have passed this last year, right? So, you know, feel free in safe spaces to say that, and certainly think it, because I do, right? So, because it would have been really nice to have already had this tool in the toolbox that we could have now been talking about rates and ratios and how we can help maybe other organizations with this awesome tool that we passed in such a timely fashion. But that didn't happen. And again, it's Monday morning quarterbacking. Don't say that to all my colleagues. They'll get kind of, you know, irritable. But I just want you to know that I hear you and feel you, and I'm thinking the same thing. So it's right now we're just at that point of the end game, if you will. I hate to use chess references with our new governor. That's a whole nother story. But we are at the in-game strategy, and that's why you're seeing different tools just being thrown in, not for lack of care or consideration, just for the point of like making sure we have everything available as we move forward. So I'm going to stop talking and see if there's some, thank you for that. It was a Marvel reference. I will say I'm about to, unfortunately have to take an emergency trip back to my home, which is in Chicago. And I was looking at books to take on the airplane today, and this is so random. And I like to, you know, always read these books. I've got a whole stack of things I want to read about and learn about. And the one I'm picking is Parable of the Sower, right? I've read it a million times. And kind of back to that Marvel reference, you know, I like dystopian fiction. I like, you know, lots of sci-fi, but at this moment in time, the Parable of the Sower is probably the most happy piece of dystopian fiction I can find. Why is it happy? First off, because she had a plan, and second off, because it shows us what can happen if we absolutely take our eye off the wheel. And I don't want to forget that, no matter how tired I am or how many dark days we have. I don't want to forget that things could be objectively worse, and will be, if we don't make inroads in these really important spaces. So with that, I'm happy to take some questions.
Do we have any questions in the room here for Representative Berg? I have a quick one. We all know that we're waiting to see the budget forecast update, and then we will see the updates from the legislators around the capital and the operating budgets. Is there anything you have in terms of insight on time frame for that? Some people are like, you'll see it next week, and then they'll never see it before like the 25th. You'll
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I will say, I can tell you on the 18th is when we get the new forecast. And I think from there, it really becomes staff and timing in terms of what we can get out as quickly as possible. I think, you know, we always kind of go back and forth about who drops the budget first and who are we concurring with, et cetera. I think the Senate might be dropping theirs first. I don't know. They have it on some sheet somewhere. But basically, just in terms of function, we have two budgets that'll come out. And in theory, you might see some pretty similar revenue plans that these budgets will be written to. So if you look at the outgoing Governor Inslee's budget, he had his budget and it was written to certain revenue options. And then you saw bills drop that reflected those, right? So those were those necessary to implement the budget bills. So you saw Rep. Street drop some on B&O and wealth. You saw maybe some of our budget writers drop some that were not so awesome, just around cuts. And again, we didn't drop them to hear them and do those things. We dropped them because we had a budget, and then there's bills necessary to implement it. So all that to say, when you see the budget, more than likely you're going to have some revenue bills out there that the budget's being written to. And so that's going to give you a pretty decent roadmap about what the budget writers in the House and Senate are looking at, even if they're not complete parity, right? So if you look at what Ways and Means put out, and even off of the Senate floor, those were much bigger bills and dollar amounts than what you saw come out of appropriations and off the House floor. Doesn't mean that we're not going to get there with the Senate. It just means the House is being a little more conservative. And I think that's a good thing. You're going to have one chamber. And normally it's the Senate, though, which is weird. they're normally more conservative than us. We're normally like the whoa progressives, but I think Bambi alluded to the fact that we had some of our House members go to the Senate, and so you're seeing them take some bigger chances and some bigger, bigger moonshots, if you will. So I think that that's great to see. I know the folks in my caucus and folks on this call were of like minds, and so when the Senate says we want to go big, I'm like, let's go big. So I'm hoping that we can get to some of their funding levels and also some of their revenue opportunities that they're identifying. So it's, at the end of the day, it's a team sport. We're going to get there. But I will say it's going to be bad. Even with progressive revenue, it's going to be bad. Every dollar that we raise, there's going to be somebody hollering. And so, and folks are sensitive to that. So we're really trying to be mindful in the way we raise revenue, knowing that it's going to be a historic year for revenue.
Well, we thank you for, taking the bandage off and just, we need to be in the reality we're in. And I want to thank you personally for your defense of the Covenant Homeownership trailer on the floor. It was not an amazing floor to sit on, I am sure. And wanted to thank you so much for standing up for the bill and being unified as a caucus.
Thank you for that. And honestly, there's been some hard nights out there like that. So knowing that you guys are looking and paying attention, it really gives me hope. But also feel free, TVW, cut away, clip, name and shame, because I think with that debate and some other ones, we heard some pretty horrific things. And I know that we don't have the same social media game as maybe some folks on the other side of the aisle, but damn it if we shouldn't get there. So if y'all see stuff like that on the floor and you see people saying the quiet part out loud, which right now they have like this, kind of carte blanche to do so, please clip that, please share widely, please show the retorts. We've got to get out of the space of like not saying what we heard, right? Like and unfortunately, I am so constrained by being in session and being a legislator and what I can share and push out and how that lands. So I'm just really hoping that folks on this call are empowered to take those moments as well as other ones. Last night, there was a reason we were here till 3 a.m. There's, again, a whole nother bunch of stuff said, but just getting that all together and making sure the public knows in a succinct way. No one wants to watch TVW for 9 hours, so nor do I, but clip it, name it, shame it, amplify it. And so that way we have the support that we need as we go into these difficult conversations where we're talking about money. Budgets are a moral document, and we've seen some amoral behavior on the House floor the last 2 weeks. And so putting that into, that intersection of that language and that behavior and some of the moral things that we're going to have to do with money, if you guys can just marry that up, Godspeed, because we really could use the help.
Right. Well, we're hearing your mandate and
Thank
we
you.
will definitely follow up. But again, thank you so much.
you.
And thank you for taking time. I know it's hard. You're super busy and we completely appreciate it.
So thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks.
You too. All right. Well, thanks to Rep Berg. We're going to go ahead and move forward now. We're going to hear from Dan Burley of Sightline Institute. Dan has some wonderful updates on 2 bills in our framework. And Dan, go ahead and take it away.
Great. Thank you, Bambi. Thanks for inviting me again. Good to see everybody. It's been 2 months already since I was here last talking about the lot split bill, and Senator Bateman came and gave a review of the parking bill. And I've been working on a bunch of bills in the session and sort of my head's spinning, and I'll try to keep my head sorted and explain things as best I can. So on the lot split bill, you all, I think, are familiar with this, or most of you are. This bill's been around for 3 years. This is the third time, hopefully third time's a charm or something. This year, so the bill first ran in 2023. It passed the House nearly unanimously and then died in the Senate. In 2024, the same bill came back. Almost the exact same thing happened. This year, it's a new bill and has some fairly significant changes. Same idea. The bill is intended to allow sort of a typical homeowner to have an easy process by which they can split off part of their lot for another house. So this year, the the big change, the most important change I would say is that it was updated with language that makes it very clear that this is a administrative process, meaning, you know, there's no public hearings or anything like that. The decision is made administratively and it can't be appealed. So it makes the process happen faster and it's more, it's less risky, more certain. And then the other thing that it does that's important is that it puts some more guardrails on what can count what as a split lot. Basically, the idea is that you don't want to have people splitting off lots that would be unbuildable for various kinds of reasons. You know, things like availability of utilities or encroaching on critical areas. So the bill has language making sure that lot splits aren't done with those undesirable things happening. And then the other change this year is that the bill isn't as broad in terms of geographically where it applies. It applies only where the middle housing bill applies, which is basically small, medium and large cities, but not in counties. So anyway, the bill, the play-by-play on the bill this session so far, it passed the House Housing Committee 16-1. Then it had to go to appropriations, which was unfortunate. It's another hurdle. Previous years, the bill didn't have to go to a fiscal committee. This year, things are changing. They're sending more bills to fiscal committees. The reason this bill went to a fiscal committee is because it has a small expense related to the Department of Commerce having the right guidelines for the bill. Anyway, it got through appropriations, passed unanimously, and then last week it passed the floor, the House floor, 93-4. So once again, it's a very popular bill and had a super strong bipartisan vote. Now it has to go over to the Senate and go through the whole thing again. And actually tomorrow it has its first hearing in the Senate Housing Committee at 10:30, and Bambi already sent out a notice for how you can sign in pro for that. Any kind of support that BHI network members could provide would be helpful. I would say even if folks have time to testify, I think that would be helpful. There won't be a whole lot of testifiers. So anyway, that's the story and update with that one. Maybe I can pause there if there are any questions.
And Dan, if someone is thinking maybe about testimony for the lot splitting bill, they can go ahead and just contact me and I'll send them forward to you. I imagine that you're organizing testimony.
Yes, that sounds great. I'd be happy to give some guidance on what would be helpful in testimony.
And then we'll just remember that, you know, lot splitting was a big priority for us last year. It provides a lot of flexibility for our existing homeowners to be able to, you know, use the possibility of redeveloping their properties to stay in their neighborhoods and increase their intergenerational wealth. So a really important bill. Glad to see that it's moving forward, and hopefully you break your curse.
Right. Okay, any other questions on lot splitting out there? Okay, the second bill is parking, and some of you or most of you probably heard Senator Bateman talk about the bill a couple months ago. So the bill does two main things. The first one is that it sets universal caps on mandates, a cap of 0.5 stalls per unit for residential and a cap of 1 stall per 1,000 square feet of commercial use. I see a hand up from Ruby. Should I pause? Is that a lot split
Sure.
question?
Ms. Ruby, did you have a question about the lot splitting bill or the parking bill? You're muted if you're speaking. We can't hear you right now.
Yes, I do. I'll wait till he finishes though. I'm sorry, Dan.
No problem. Okay. So let's see. Yeah, the bill does two main things. One is set these universal caps that apply everywhere, 0.5 stalls per unit for housing and 1 stall per 1,000 square feet of commercial space. And then it also sets parking mandates to 0 for a certain set of kind of special uses, including affordable housing and small units less than 1,200 square feet and daycares and a couple other things. The bill passed the Senate Housing Committee 5-1, but it did have to take a couple weakening amendments. The bill now exempts smaller cities smaller than 20,000. The bill does not apply to. And then there's a kind of a obscure amendment about county roads that essentially exempts most counties from the bill as well. But on the plus side, the caps and the exemptions that I mentioned, they were not touched at all. Nobody wanted to amend those down. We were kind of surprised by that. So the bill actually is still incredibly strong. The bill passed the Senate on a strong bipartisan vote of 40-8. And now it's over to the House. And this bill is, by coincidence, has its first hearing tomorrow morning at 10:30, same time as on a lot split bill, but a different committee. And I would say that this committee could be the bill's toughest challenge in its entire journey. It's an odd committee. It's a 4-3 committee, Democrats and Republicans split. So we're in a major push right now to mobilize for this committee hearing and then the vote on it, which will likely happen Friday next week. So any and all support BHI network members could offer could make a huge difference here. So anyway, that's where that's at. Happy to say more about the policy or anything else. I'm not sure what's most useful to folks.
Ms. Ruby, why don't you go ahead and ask your question?
Dan, approximately how long do you think the speech should be for the lot splitting bill, or do you think we'd have better luck just writing in or trying both?
I think that for lot splitting, the last time I checked, there were very few people signed up to testify. So there will be time to testify. And I know that you signed up to testify for the mobile dwellings bill and you didn't get a chance to testify, which was, that happens and that's annoying. But I think in this case, you should easily get a spot to testify. There aren't that many bills in the hearing either. So usually the standard is 2 minutes. And guessing right now, based on what I see on who's signed up and the number of bills in the whole hearing, 2 minutes. Yeah, Ryan just said two signed up. So I'm going to sign up too, so make it 3. But so anyway, the short answer is 2 minutes. And Ruby, I can keep you updated tomorrow if I find out something different and it's going to be shorter in advance.
Well, I'll make sure to get my most important points, at least in the 1 minute thing. So, even if they do have to cut it off, I'll say what I need to say basically. But if you could make sure to get me the link and all the stuff and the date, all that information, I'll be fine.
Yeah, great. I'm happy to do that. I'll send you all the info after we finish here.
Thank you.
And can you restate the dates of the hearings?
Tomorrow. The
Both?
14th. Yeah, both are tomorrow, the 14th
Okay, thank you.
at 10:30.
Right, well, if there are any other questions for Dan? Denise, do you have a question? We can't, there we go.
Yes. So Dan, you're just looking for as many people to testify as possible, tomorrow?
For lot splitting.
Yeah.
Um, if you're asking if you should testify, I would say yes, that would be great. I think just from what we've seen, and I think the more the better. Yeah, in this case,
Okay.
yes. Sometimes you have to worry about too many
Yeah.
people signing up, and then they end up having to, cut the testimony short. But in this case, I think the more the merrier.
Okay, I'm not sure if I'll be able to, but I will be on campus tomorrow for Housing and Homelessness Advocacy Day. So I need to check the schedule, but since I'm
Right.
there already, I might be able to testify.
I'm going to be down in Olympia tomorrow too.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Dan, thank you for providing that update. And yeah, it's a whole other game when you move to the opposite chamber. So, we just came out of the housing. That was not fun. And we're heading into Senate housing now for some of our bills. So, completely understand where you are. But I would encourage you for House housing to show up robustly, because there is a lot of voices that are just feeling totally unencumbered to be oppositional.
Right.
All right. Well, thanks to Dan for that update. We're going to move forward now with Denise. Denise is going to give us an update about the foreclosure bill that they have been advocating for.
Hello, thanks so much for giving us time on the agenda to talk about this bill. So this is Senate Bill 5686. It was introduced and sponsored by now Senator Orwell. And it passed the Senate on Friday. It was a party line vote, 30-19. So I think that I'm noticing as a trend a lot this year. This bill is going to do a couple of things. Number one, it is going to expand the right to foreclosure prevention mediation to include homeowners who are having issues with their HOA. So the Foreclosure Fairness Act is primarily a mediation-oriented bill. The program allows homeowners who are in mortgage default to call the hotline, which is what my organization runs, and then get referred to housing counseling or legal aid, whichever is most appropriate, and then work in an ongoing way with the housing counselor or legal aid attorney to try and negotiate an outcome with their loan servicer that will allow them to stay in the home. So that's kind of the goal of the Foreclosure Fairness Act and the foreclosure prevention safety net. If the legal aid attorney or housing counselor aren't able to, get to a solution with the loan servicer, then the homeowner has the right to mediation, and that has to be requested by the legal aid attorney or the housing counselor that's working with the homeowner. The mediation program is run by the Washington State Department of Commerce, so they're another stakeholder and program service provider in the program. Most of the mediators are through the dispute resolution centers around the state. If there's other mediators as well, so the request goes in, and the bank is required to send a decision maker to the mediation appointment, and it's sort of like a last sort of attempt to try and work something out. And the teeth of the Foreclosure Fairness Act rest in the mediation, because if in the case of mortgage default, if the lender doesn't come to the table and negotiate with good intentions, if they don't submit their forms in a timely fashion, if they don't show up to the meetings like they're supposed to show up, then the mediator can find that they are acting not in good faith. And that, not in good faith, or, AKA bad faith finding, actually opens them up to civil legal vulnerability. And so that really is what sort of keeps, I think it's the teeth that keeps them coming to the table to try and work something out. So because the original bill is really focused on mortgage default, and a lot of the language about the notices and the different options, they're all really resting within the world of mortgage lending, it doesn't really apply to homeowners whose issue is with HOA dues or HOA assessments and related fees. And so this bill is basically rewriting all of that information to include very specifically that homeowners who are having issues with paying their fees or paying their assessments, they will be able to, call the hotline, access a housing counselor or legal aid attorney. They can have, meetings with the HOA supported by their attorney or counselor, and they have the right to that mediation. And so, that's going to be really great. I know we heard a lot of talk earlier in this meeting. Condos keep coming up. And, as we've seen, as home ownership becomes more and more expensive and homes become more expensive in Washington state, we do see more and more people going towards condos as the most affordable option. So we really think this affects a lot of homeowners, and especially homeowners who are at the sort of more moderate income level and looking for more moderately priced properties, because that's what's attainable in the market for them. So we think this is going to help a lot of people. Another really important part of the bill is that it creates a new funding mechanism to help support the foreclosure prevention work. So the original bill had a funding mechanism in there that was requiring banks to pay a fee every time they sent a notice of default, but it has never generated enough to support the program. It's only when we have federal funds coming because of a crisis that the program is actually fully funded. We've been in sort of the years leading up to the pandemic, we were sort of going to the legislature hat in hand, trying to look for investment from the state. We were successful in getting some budget proviso support. But it really wasn't enough, and the program have been quite squeezed. And that includes the hotline, the housing counseling programs across the state, various different nonprofits that provide that service, and then the legal aid attorneys. Mostly that is through Northwest Justice Project. And so they've also been really squeezed. With the pandemic, a lot of federal funds flowed to the state and sort of like put a Band-Aid on this ongoing problem. But now those funds are going away. And we're really looking at a pretty dire situation for foreclosure prevention services. If we were to have to rely on the funding that the Foreclosure Fairness Act generates now, we would probably see a downsizing of all of the staff that are like the frontline staff from 45 people statewide to about 7. And that includes legal aid attorneys, hotline staff, and housing counselors. The demand is not going down. The demand remains high. People are still struggling to recover from the pandemic. And then, of course, now we have a new economic uncertainty that's affecting a lot of people. So we know that we really need to keep this foreclosure prevention safety net at the level where it is now, in order to be able to meet the needs of the homeowners out there who are seeking our services. So, Senator Orwell was the sponsor of the original foreclosure fairness bill. She convenes the stakeholder group every year to sort of see what changes might need to be made based on what's happening out there in the world. And so that stakeholder group came together this year. We, talked about that HOA issue, and then we also talked about that we really need to fix the funding situation. So we came upon a new funding source. It is every time there is a residential loan originated in Washington state, the settlement agent or title company or escrow agent, they kind of go by different names depending on, whether you're a bank or a lawyer or wherever. So they will have to send $80 into the sort of going into the foreclosure fairness fund, and that will generate enough funding to help us sustain the foreclosure prevention programs at the level where they are now and be able to meet the needs of the homeowners that need it. So we're really excited about this. This bill is really critically important and very time sensitive. It has to pass this session. We're really happy that it passed out of the Senate, and I know it's come up before. Now we're in the House, and since this isn't where the sponsor is, you normally would think it's like going to be a much more challenging time, but I'm hopeful that because Senator Orwell was Representative Orwell up until just right before the beginning of session, she still has really strong relationships in the House. We know that she has a lot of allies there who were quite supportive of foreclosure prevention in past sessions. And so hoping that that is, going to help us move this bill. The bill has a fiscal note. So it did go from Senate Housing to Ways and Means. We didn't actually hear a lot of pushback about the fiscal note. I think most of the fiscal note can be sort of absorbed within the funding that the fee will create, which is helpful. And I think the other thing I want to say about the bill is it also creates, so the bill sort of says a certain percentage of the funds generated go to the hotline, a certain percentage to housing counseling, a certain percentage to legal aid, but it also creates a new specific line item for marketing and outreach. And the intention for that is that we really want to make sure that Black homeowners and other BIPOC homeowners are being made aware of this program. We have not typically had funding for marketing and outreach. Typically what happens is the person gets a notice from their bank when they're delinquent on their mortgage, and then that tells them, hey, you should call this hotline. But people don't always trust the information they get from their bank. And what we find is people put off calling until the very last minute, which means their options for resolving their foreclosure situation in a positive way are much more limited. What we saw with the federal funds coming, with the CARES funds, with the Homeowner Assistance Fund program that was funded by ARPA, is that there was intentional marketing and outreach that happened. And we have seen a lot more diversity among who is contacting us and reaching out for help. And also that people are reaching out way, way earlier in the process, which is great for them because it means they have more time to figure something out to help them stay in the home. So I'm really excited about having some dedicated funding for marketing and outreach so that we can really get people connected with these resources a lot sooner and have more opportunity to help resolve things. So the bill has been scheduled. It is going to be having its hearing in the House Housing Committee on Tuesday at 4 o'clock. I think HDC is going to include it on its sort of action alert items, so you'll be able to use that. WHRC is also sending out something, so if you're on our mailing list, you'll probably see that, but we definitely would like as many people to sign in pro as possible. It's come up before earlier in this meeting, but there's definitely an organized effort this year to sort of, get a lot of people to sign in on anything. And so when we were in the Senate side, we had, what sort of an alarming number of con sign-ins, and the research kind of looking into sort of who was signing in con, a lot of it did seem like it was people who were signing in con on kind of anything, not just housing bills, but, we're signing in on kind of a lot of bills. So we think there's an organized effort, and we really want to make sure that we can respond to that by having lots and lots of pro sign-ins. So after Housing Committee, we'll be going to appropriations and then to rules and then to the floor. So I'm sure you'll be hearing from HDC and hearing from WHRC and all of the other partners that are collaborating on moving this bill, about opportunities to engage.
Thank you so much for that, Denise. I know that you also have another meeting ahead of you here as you continue to try and work this legislative system. I did put the sign-in pro link here inside the chat. So certainly just, take some seconds here as we're in between people and feel free to sign in pro.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. And then our last guest today, we will be hearing from Jesse Simpson of HDC. We're going to shift out of the state for a moment, and we're going to be talking more about Seattle. So this will be the Seattle Comprehensive Plan, which is still there and still happening. And Jesse's going to let us know how we can lean in.
Yeah, thanks for that, Bambi. You do have a bit of the robot voice going on, but you're understandable. So Jess Simpson, have had the pleasure of joining you all for the last couple of last couple of meetings to give an update on the comprehensive plan. This week or this month, I'm going to be pretty brief on updates as the council has been in a bit of a lull on the comprehensive plan. There have been a number of appeals, 6 filed against the final environmental impact statement by mostly a variety of kind of neighborhood anti-housing groups, mostly based in like Madison Park, Mount Baker, and some other places. I do not expect any of these appeals to carry legal weight, but they do delay the process. They will be heard by the hearing examiner likely within about a month and a half, which is pushing out some of the timelines for approval of the final plan. What council is shaping up to be doing to try to avoid some hard deadlines from the state is carving off the rezoning, implementing zoning for the neighborhood residential, or sometimes single family housing, carving that off from the rest of the comp plan and advancing emergency legislation to put that in place to avoid having the state model code come into effect, seemingly almost for saving face reasons versus anything exactly like a policy disagreement. So we are expecting some movement on that shortly. City Council has restarted their select committee meetings. Council President Sarah Nelson bumped out Council Member Dan Strauss from the vice chair position in favor of the new council member Mark Solomon, who is chair of land use and represents the District 2 for South Seattle. We are expecting some sort of late April public hearing. They have to give at least 1 month notice. We haven't gotten that notice yet. So stay tuned from Bambi. We'll likely have a interim BHI network policy group meeting in advance of that. So I'll be there to share some info. In the interim, we are keeping up the drumbeat of advocacy. It's still really important that the city council hears from people who care about more housing through the comprehensive plan and want specific improvements to the plan. We have a form letter running that I'd like to direct everyone to fill out. Please customize it. It makes more impact when people see that it's coming from a real person. I'd also like to take the quick second to introduce Jess Yang, who is he's just started this week as HDC's new community organizer. She'll be working closely on the comprehensive plan. You want to say a couple of words, Jess?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Jess, she, her. I'm really excited to be a part of HDC and a part of this work. Yesterday I met with Bambi and she told me a lot about BHI and all that you do. So thanks everyone for all your work here, and I'm excited to be a part of it.
Thanks. You'll maybe start receiving emails directly from Jess here. So definitely want to encourage you to keep letting council know that you want more housing. We are also co-hosting some happy hours with the Urbanist this Thursday and next Thursday, 6 p.m. Today's is at Big Time Brewing. Next week's is Tiku Tavern. You can find the info again through the Urbanist calendar. And then finally, we've got a new coalition letter. So as part of the Complete Communities Coalition, we have put out 2 rounds of broad sign-on letters with many of the organizations on this call represented. Those have been, I think, really critical way to get the mayor's plan to be as strong as possible. And we've seen some steady incremental improvements in the plan because of that advocacy. Council has received those letters, but this time we're sending a direct to council coalition letter. We have we are circulating the sign-on. And let me know directly. You can fill in that Google form and that'll directly endorse it and get you signed on. So definitely, I'll be reaching out separately to all of you, but hey, if you can save me an email, you reach out, you just submit that form. Our coalition sign-on letter, in addition to reiterating the points that Seattle needs more housing, needs more abundant housing through this comprehensive plan, asks for some specific amendments for the council to take to strengthen the plan, notably around expanding stacked flats for accessible middle housing, expanding the affordable housing density bonus by allowing it to be used citywide, and creating a similar density bonus for low-rise zones, to fully eliminate parking requirements near frequent transit, add new neighborhood centers in low displacement risk and high opportunity neighborhoods, continue to expand small scale commercial, and expand mixed use housing. And let me check that form.
Thanks for letting us know, Kelsey.
Yeah.
The Google Forms, it's always a 50-50, whether you're gonna send out what you think or it's gonna have a restriction.
It's so annoying.
I agree.
How about that? Will that one work?
I see asking me for a sign on, but Jesse, I'm sure you can tweak that. We'll send it out as a follow-up, and we'll send it out in the digest tomorrow so that people have that. Really important to have those organizational sign-on letters to show the breadth of support and to get attention. Any questions for Jesse around the comprehensive plan here in Seattle? All right, well, thank you so much, Jesse, for the update. I know that we're going to hear more. Things are on the calendar and there are more opportunities to lean in. We're towards the end of the meeting. I thank you so much for being here. I know it is, lunch and post-lunch times, hard to stay present, but now is an opportunity. If you do have anything you would like to share for the good of the whole, something happening within your space, your organization that we should know about, something that maybe we didn't get an opportunity to hear about today that might be on our homeownership policy framework, feel free to, unmute and share. Adria, did you want to share something?
Yes, really, it's just kind of a general comment and things that I would like people to keep in mind is that when we, executive orders aside, when we talk about housing and about all these different bills and trying to create more housing, I think that's all well and good. Like, we need to keep doing that. And just to remember that we also need to be thinking about affirmative marketing and how we make sure that people have access to all these different housing opportunities and ensuring that they're not being discriminated against again in new housing. So just in all the ways that you can think about what those policies look like, how people are advertising those opportunities when they come up, how they're ensuring that new development is accessible, how they're getting information out to new landlords who are building ADUs and other types of middle housing. Just really be thinking about the whole ecosystem of how people access these opportunities is really important. So that's what I wanted to share.
Thank you for that reminder. And, you know, certainly incredibly important, especially as we have potentially increased some possibilities for housing options. And there are going to be new pathways to advertise those opportunities. So definitely something to keep top of mind. Any other announcements anyone would like to share or thoughts? Go ahead and just give you a quick a summary of what happened on the floor. I'm a little bit moved by Representative Berg saying, you know, we need to say what happened and make sure that it's called out. Just so you know, out of the 15 amendments that we're trying to change the CHA trailer bill, there was really no shame in putting forward an amendment around felony convictions of participants during the program participation. There was no shame in putting forth a sex offender amendment on the bill. There was, you know, no shame in almost 25 minutes of saying only people 70 years and older who have actually been impacted by discrimination should be the ones eligible for the program. So when I say that this program is vulnerable to not only the trailer bill having issues, but the actual program itself, there was there was amendments there to say if there's anyone who has any type of a legal challenge at any time, the bill will the whole program will stop until it all finishes itself up, appeals and all. And there was a ton of misinformation about how the Covenant Homeownership Act is creating our budget deficit and a whole bunch of other nonsense. It's a dedicated funding source. So just so you know, in that 5+ hours, there was just some overtly offensive stuff. And then a whole bunch of covertly offensive stuff. And it's there and we don't want to see it again, and we don't want to have our legislators, you know, of color sitting through that again. So I do really hope that you will lean in and send a very strong message to the Senate. The message that was sent by the House Democrats, you know, we're just not going to have it. They don't have permission to do it. And this is a bill we believe in. It's a bill that we should be proud of, and we're going to continue to stand with the bill. So on that note, wishing you all a wonderful afternoon. I know there's a lot of kind of heavy information today in this meeting in terms of, you know, not the rosiest outlook, but I don't think we need a rosy outlook. We just need to know that when we stand together in solidarity, we do create change. And so challenges will come our way and we are prepared for them. So I thank you all for being here today and for continuing to show up for the Black Home Initiative. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.